The wind screamed across the mountains that morning, carrying shards of ice and sorrow through a valley blanketed in endless white. A snowstorm had swallowed the world whole just hours ago, leaving behind a haunting silence, broken only by the faint sound of a dog's desperate whine. On an isolated road where no footsteps remained visible, a German shepherd lay pressed against the snow, refusing to move. His fur was frozen, his breathing shallow, and his eyes, dark with exhaustion, never left a small mound beneath him. If anyone had passed by, they might have thought he was just another stray lost to the storm. But there was something different about the way he stayed. He wasn't lost. He was guarding something he loved more than his own life. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the loyalty of animals that never fades, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Pawsitive Tales. Every click helps us tell more stories of courage, compassion, and the unspoken love between humans and their loyal friends. Hours later, when the rescue team received the distress call, they didn't expect much. The storm had cleared, and most stranded travelers had already been found. But one report stood out. A local ranger had seen a dog near the edge of a ravine, lying motionless beside the frozen woods. It didn't make sense. Why hadn't it moved in 2 days? Rescuers trudged through knee-deep snow to reach the site. The cold bit through their coats, and their breath came out in clouds. When they finally spotted him, the sight made them stop dead in their tracks. The German shepherd was curled tightly on the ground, his fur glazed with frost. His body trembled, not from fear, but from sheer determination. Every now and then, he lifted his head and looked around, then lowered it again protectively, as if shielding something beneath him. When the rescuers came closer, the dog growled weakly, a warning, a plea, and a heartbreak all in one sound. They could see his paws trembling, his nose bleeding from the cold. And then, when one rescuer knelt and brushed away the snow near his chest, they froze. A small hand, pale and still, was sticking out from under the snow, gently gripping the dog's leg. The air around them seemed to disappear. None of them spoke. The shepherd had been lying there shielding a child, a boy no older than 6. They rushed into action. The child was barely breathing, his lips blue, his body dangerously cold. It was clear he'd been there for a long time, lost, alone, and buried under the snow. But somehow, against every odd, he was still alive. And it was because of the dog. The rescuers worked quickly, wrapping the boy in thermal blankets, placing warm packs around his tiny body. Through it all, the dog refused to move far. Even as they lifted the child into the rescue sled, the shepherd limped behind, whimpering softly, as though afraid they might take the boy away for good. Back at the mountain station, as medics worked frantically to stabilize the child, the rescuers pieced together the story. The boy, named Ethan, had gone missing 3 days earlier after his family's car had skidded off a back road during the storm. His parents had gone to get help, but were caught in the blizzard. The family's German shepherd Max had stayed behind with Ethan in the wreckage. When the car was finally covered in snow, Max had dragged Ethan out through a broken window, pulling him across the freezing terrain to a small hollow under a pine tree, his final refuge. For 3 days, Max had stayed there. He'd used his body heat to keep Ethan alive, even as his own strength faded. When food ran out, he stayed hungry. When the wind howled and snow piled higher, he dug himself deeper around the boy. He didn't bark for help, he simply endured, trusting that someone would come. And they did, just in time. As doctors worked to revive Ethan, Max sat by the door, his eyes locked on the room where his little human lay. He was too weak to stand, his body shaking with exhaustion. But when Ethan's heart monitor began to beep rhythmically again, a small spark lit up in Max's gaze. He lifted his head, tail twitching just once, as though his heart finally understood he had done it. News spread quickly. The story of the shepherd who refused to leave the snow touched everyone who heard it. People from around the world sent messages, blankets, and donations. Children drew pictures of Max as a hero. And when Ethan finally woke up days later, His first word was a faint broken whisper. Max. The reunion was something no camera could truly capture. The boy reached out from his hospital bed, weak but smiling. Max, still wrapped in bandages, limped toward him, his tail wagging gently. When their hands met, boy and dog, the entire room fell silent. Nurses wiped tears from their eyes. The rescuers who had found them stood in the corner, unable to speak. For that moment, the world seemed to stop spinning. It was just a boy and his best friend, bound by a love that had survived the impossible. In the weeks that followed, Max recovered slowly. His paws had frostbite, and his body bore the marks of his ordeal. But he never let it slow him down. Each morning, he'd sit by Ethan's bedside, watching him play or draw. Sometimes, the boy would whisper stories to him, stories about how they'd explore the woods again one day, but only when the snow melted and the sun came back. Doctors called it a miracle. Scientists called it instinct. But anyone who looked into Max's eyes knew it was something deeper, pure, selfless love. Months later, Ethan's family held a small ceremony in the same valley where it all began. They planted a tree beside the spot where Max had saved him, a symbol of life that would grow no matter how harsh the winter. As the first leaves sprouted, Ethan tied a small tag to one of the branches. It read, "Because of you, I'm here." And Max, lying nearby in the grass, wagged his tail softly, eyes half closed in peace. Even years later, people in the nearby towns still speak of the day rescuers found the dog who refused to leave the snow. Parents tell their children that sometimes heroes don't wear uniforms or capes. They wear fur and love without limits. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Pawsitive Tales. Leave a comment below telling us what this story meant to you, or share your own experience of an animal's love or bravery. Your voice helps keep these stories alive. And this special request to comment. What would you have said to Max if you could have met him that day? Share your message to this brave soul in the comments. Let's fill them with love for every animal who's ever been a hero.